The champagne flute shattered in Damon Blackthorne's hand. Golden liquid and crystal fragments scattered across the pristine white tablecloth as his entire world tilted on its axis. Blood welled from the cuts on his palm, but he barely felt the sting. Every nerve in his body was focused on the scent that had just hit him like a physical blow, wild honeysuckle and summer rain, with that underlying sweetness that belonged to only one woman in the entire world. Elena. His wolf surged forward with such violence that Damon had to grip the edge of the mahogany table to keep from shifting right there in the middle of Chez Laurent, the most exclusive restaurant in downtown Seattle. Across from him, Richard Morrison was still talking about quarterly projections and market expansions, completely oblivious to the fact that his billion-dollar business partner had just discovered his entire life had been a lie. Blackthorne? You all right there? Morrison's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Damon's amber eyes swept the dining room with predatory precision, his enhanced senses cutting through the mingled aromas of truffle oil and expensive perfume until he found her. There, in the corner booth by the window, sat the woman who had destroyed him 5 years ago. Elena Winters looked exactly the same, long chestnut hair catching the evening light, those impossible green eyes that had haunted his dreams, the graceful curve of her neck that his wolf had once claimed with a mating bite that should have bound them for life. She wore a simple blue dress that made her look young and innocent, nothing like the woman who had fled their mating ceremony in the middle of the night without so much as a goodbye. But she wasn't alone. 3 identical boys sat beside her in the booth, and Damon's world exploded into 1,000 pieces all over again. Dark hair. Olive skin. And when one of them turned toward the window, catching the light just right, Damon saw his own amber eyes staring back at him. His sons. His sons. 4 years old, maybe 5, which meant the night she disappeared. The night she'd run from him like he was a monster instead of the man who would have died for her. She'd been carrying his children. Damon's hands clenched into fists on the table, his claws threatening to extend. Every instinct screamed at him to cross the room, to claim what was his, to demand answers from the woman who had ripped his heart out and apparently taken his legacy with her. His wolf paced behind his ribs like a caged animal, snarling with 5 years of suppressed rage and pain. "I need a moment," he managed to say to Morrison, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Of course, take your time. The Henderson acquisition can wait." Morrison gathered his papers, probably thinking Damon was having some sort of medical episode. If he only knew. As soon as Morrison left, Damon allowed himself to really look at them. The boys were beautiful, perfect combinations of his features and Elena's. One had her stubborn chin, another had the Blackthorne family dimple, and the third had Elena's expressive eyebrows. They were eating ice cream and laughing at something Elena was saying, completely unaware that their father was watching them from across the room. Their father who hadn't even known they existed until 30 seconds ago. The betrayal cut deeper than any silver blade. Not only had Elena run from him, not only had she broken their sacred mating bond, but she had stolen his children. She had robbed him of their first steps, their first words, 4 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and birthday parties. His wolf wanted blood. His human side wanted answers. But before he could decide which impulse to follow, Elena's head lifted as if she sensed his stare. Her eyes swept the dining room with the casual indifference of someone checking the time, and then she saw him. The color drained from her face so completely that for a moment Damon thought she might faint. Her green eyes went wide with something that looked like terror, and her hand instinctively moved to cover her throat, right where his mating mark should have been. Time stopped. 5 years collapsed into nothing as they stared at each other across the crowded restaurant. Damon could hear her heartbeat from here, could smell the spike of adrenaline in her scent, could see the way her whole body had gone rigid with fight or flight response. She chose flight. "Boys, we need to go. Now." Her voice carried across the space between them, sharp with panic. The triplets looked up in confusion as Elena frantically gathered their coats and toys. She threw a handful of bills on the table without counting them, her movements jerky with desperation. Damon rose from his chair, every muscle coiled to give chase. His wolf was howling now, demanding he not let her escape again, demanding he claim his mate and his cubs and make them understand that they belonged to him. But Elena was already pushing the boys toward the back exit, her eyes never leaving his face. In those green depths he saw fear, yes, but also something else. Guilt. Pain. And underneath it all, a love so profound it made his chest ache with recognition. She still loved him. After 5 years, after running, after keeping his children from him, she still loved him. Which made her betrayal that much worse. Elena herded the boys toward the exit with the efficiency of someone who had practiced quick escapes. But in her haste, her purse caught on the edge of a nearby chair and spilled its contents across the polished floor. Damon was moving before he'd made the conscious decision, his werewolf reflexes carrying him across the restaurant in seconds. He dropped to one knee, gathering scattered lip balm and toy cars and his blood turned to ice. A hospital bracelet. White plastic with black lettering, partially torn but still readable, Elena Winters. Emergency admission. Date of service, October 15th. October 15th. The night she'd disappeared. The night she'd run from their mating ceremony and shattered both their worlds. She hadn't just left him. She'd been in the hospital. Damon looked up to find Elena frozen in the doorway, her hand pressed against the glass door, her eyes locked on the bracelet in his hand. The boys were tugging at her dress, asking why they weren't leaving, but she seemed incapable of movement. "Mama," one of them said, and Damon's heart stuttered at the word. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Elena." Damon's voice came out as barely more than a whisper, but in the sudden quiet of the restaurant, it carried like a gunshot. She flinched as if he'd struck her, and then she was gone, pushing through the door and disappearing into the Seattle evening with his children in tow. Damon stared at the hospital bracelet in his palm, his mind reeling with implications. An emergency admission on the night she'd fled. The night she should have been celebrating their mating bond, should have been in his arms, should have been planning their future together. Instead, she'd been in a hospital. Alone. Carrying his children. His wolf was going insane, pacing and snarling and demanding they follow their mate's scent trail. But his human side was paralyzed by a devastating realization that was slowly crystallizing in his mind. What if Elena hadn't run from him at all? What if something had happened to her that night? Something that had made it impossible for her to return to him? The questions multiplied like wildfire. Had she been hurt? Sick? Had someone threatened her? Had she been protecting him, or protecting their children? 5 years of carefully constructed hatred began to crumble as Damon clutched the hospital bracelet like a lifeline. He'd spent half a decade convinced that Elena had simply decided she didn't want to be mated to a werewolf, that she'd gotten cold feet about joining his world permanently. But pregnant women didn't typically end up in emergency rooms because of cold feet. "Sir? Sir, is everything all right?" Damon looked up to find their waiter hovering nervously nearby, probably wondering why the restaurant's most powerful patron was kneeling on the floor holding a medical bracelet. "Fine," Damon managed, though he felt anything but fine. He pocketed the bracelet and stood, his movements stiff and mechanical. Just fine. But it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Somewhere in this city, Elena was probably packing right now, probably planning another disappearing act. She'd bolt again, take his children, and this time he might never find them. Not again. He wouldn't lose them again. Damon pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number he'd hoped never to use. Marcus Chen answered on the first ring. Blackthorn Pack Security. "Marcus, it's Damon. I need you to track someone. Now." "Of course, Alpha. Who are we looking for?" Damon's grip tightened on the phone as he watched the empty doorway where Elena had vanished. "Elena Winters. And Marcus? She has 3 children with her. 4-year-old boys." There was a pause. "Your children?" "My children. I'll have a location within the hour. Make it 30 minutes. Damon hung up and walked back to his table, where Morrison was returning with fresh contracts and a concerned expression. The business deal that had seemed so important an hour ago now felt like a meaningless distraction. "Sorry about that," Damon said, settling into his chair and reaching for a napkin to wrap around his cut palm. Where were we? But even as Morrison launched back into his presentation about market shares and profit margins, Damon's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about hospital bracelets and amber-eyed children and a woman who might not have betrayed him after all. He was thinking about 5 years of wasted time and unanswered questions. Most of all, he was thinking about the fear in Elena's eyes when she'd seen him. Not the fear of someone who had been caught in a lie, but the fear of someone who had been running from something much more dangerous than a broken heart. What had happened to her that night? What had driven her to the hospital instead of into his arms? And more importantly, what was she still running from? Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered with city lights, and somewhere in that maze of streets and buildings, Elena was probably telling his sons that they needed to pack quickly, that they needed to disappear again. But this time, Damon would be ready. This time, he wouldn't let them slip away into the night without answers. This time, he would get the truth, even if it destroyed everything he thought he knew about the worst night of his life. Chapter 2. 26 minutes later, Damon's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found her. For 12 Pine Street, apartment 3B. Goes by Elena Martinez now. Works 2 jobs, diner and cleaning service. Kids enrolled at Maple Elementary under the same last name. Damon stared at the address, his wolf prowling restlessly under his skin. Elena Martinez. She'd changed her name, built an entirely new life, and was apparently working herself to the bone to support their children. His children. The betrayal cut deeper with every new detail, but so did something else, a gnawing worry about why she'd felt the need to disappear so completely. The hospital bracelet burned in his jacket pocket like a brand. He left Morrison with a hastily signed contract and a promise to review the details later. Right now, nothing mattered except getting answers. The drive across Seattle felt endless despite the late-hour traffic. Damon's hands gripped the steering wheel of his Porsche so tightly he was surprised it didn't crack. Every red light was torture, every slow-moving car an obstacle between him and his family. His family. The words felt foreign and familiar at the same time. For 5 years he'd convinced himself he was better off alone, that Elena's abandonment had been a blessing in disguise. He'd thrown himself into building his business empire, becoming the most powerful werewolf on the West Coast, accumulating wealth and influence like armor against the pain she'd left behind. But seeing those amber eyes and 3 little faces had shattered every defense he'd built. Pine Street was a world away from his penthouse downtown. The neighborhood was tired and worn, the kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask too many questions. Perfect for someone trying to disappear. Apartment 3B was in a converted house that had seen better decades. Paint peeled from the front steps, and the mailboxes were held together with duct tape. This was where his mate, had been living with his sons. The wrongness of it made his wolf snarl with territorial fury. Elena should be in his house, in their bed, surrounded by luxury and protection. His children should want for nothing, should have the best of everything, not be living in this barely adequate housing. But first, he needed answers. Damon climbed the narrow stairs, inhaling deeply. Elena's scent was everywhere here, along with 3 smaller variations that made his chest tighten with recognition. His cubs. His boys. They were so close he could hear their heartbeats through the thin walls. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What if she ran again? What if she grabbed the children and disappeared out the back while he stood at the front door? The thought sent his wolf into a frenzy of protective rage. No. He wouldn't lose them again. Not now, not ever. Damon pulled out his phone and called Marcus again. I need surveillance on the back exits of 412 Pine Street. Now. Already on it, boss. Building surrounded. Of course it was. Marcus had been his head of security for 8 years. The man knew how to think 3 steps ahead. Damon knocked. Silence. Then the soft sound of bare feet on hardwood, moving toward the door. He could practically hear Elena's heart hammering against her ribs. Who is it? Her voice was carefully neutral, but he caught the underlying tension. You know who it is, Elena. Another silence, longer this time. Then the sound of multiple locks being disengaged, 4 of them, he counted. When the door finally opened, Elena stood in the gap with the chain still engaged, her green eyes wide and terrified. She was even more beautiful up close. 5 years had added a few lines around her eyes and a wariness that hadn't been there before, but she still took his breath away. Her hair was shorter now, barely brushing her shoulders, and she looked thinner than he remembered. Too thin. How did you find me? She whispered. Does it matter? Damon leaned closer to the door, breathing in her scent. Still honeysuckle and rain, but now tinged with exhaustion and fear. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. 3 sons suggest otherwise. Elena flinched as if he'd slapped her. Go away, Damon. Please. I'm not going anywhere until I get answers. Starting with this. He pulled the hospital bracelet from his pocket and held it up where she could see it through the gap. The color drained from her face completely. Where did you get that? You dropped it when you ran from me. Again. Damon's voice turned cold. October 15th, Elena. Emergency admission. Want to tell me what happened that night? The night you were supposed to become my mate? The night you disappeared without a word? Elena's hand flew to her throat, covering the spot where his mating bite should have been. I can't do this. Not now. When, then? When our sons are 18 and wondering why their father never existed? When they're grown men who've spent their entire lives thinking they weren't wanted? They are wanted. The fierce protectiveness in her voice surprised him. They're everything to me. But not enough to tell them who their father is. Elena's eyes flashed with anger, and for a moment she looked like the woman he'd fallen in love with, fierce and passionate and unafraid. You don't understand. You can't understand. Then help me understand. Before Elena could answer, a small voice piped up from deeper in the apartment. Mama? Who's at the door? Elena's entire body went rigid. Nobody, sweetheart. Go back to bed. But it was too late. Damon could hear small feet pattering across the floor, and then a dark-haired boy appeared at Elena's side, rubbing his eyes sleepily. He looked exactly like Damon had at that age, all wild hair and amber eyes and stubborn curiosity. Mama, why are you whispering? The boy looked up at Damon through the gap in the door, and his eyes went wide. Who's that man? Elena's hand dropped to the boy's shoulder, pulling him closer. Kai, go back to your room. But Mama. Now. Kai, his son's name was Kai, looked between Elena and Damon with the kind of intelligent assessment that made Damon's chest swell with pride. This was his child. His blood. His legacy. He looks like me, Kai said suddenly, tilting his head to study Damon's face. He has my eyes. Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. Kai, please. Are you our daddy? The question was innocent and direct, and it hit Damon like a physical blow. Elena's composure cracked completely. Go to bed. Right now. But Kai didn't move. He stared at Damon with those familiar amber eyes, waiting for an answer that Elena clearly didn't want him to give. Kai. Damon's voice was rough with emotion. Is that your name? The boy nodded solemnly. Kai Martinez. My brothers are Leo and Zane. They're sleeping, but I heard voices. Martinez. Even their last name wasn't his. Elena had erased every trace of him from their lives. How old are you, Kai? Damon asked, though he already knew the answer. 4 3/4. We're gonna be 5 soon. All of us together, 'cause we're triplets. Kai's voice was proud, but then his expression grew sad. Most kids only have one birthday, but we get to share. That makes you very special. Mama says we're special 'cause we're smart and kind and brave. But... Kai glanced up at Elena, then back at Damon. Are you really our daddy? Elena made a choked sound. Kai, go to your room. Now. This time, the authority in her voice worked. Kai's shoulders slumped, but he obediently turned away. Just before he disappeared down the hallway, he looked back over his shoulder. I hope you are, he said quietly. It gets lonely not having a daddy like the other kids. The words hung in the air like an accusation as Kai's footsteps faded away. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Elena. Damon's voice was gentle now, all the anger temporarily burned away by his son's innocent honesty. Let me in. Please. For a moment he thought she might refuse. Then her shoulders sagged in defeat, and she closed the door long enough to unhook the chain. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with obvious care despite the limited budget. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, and toys were neatly organized in colorful bins. It was a home built on love if not money. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, standing in the middle of the tiny living room like she was trying to physically hold herself together. They don't know, she whispered. I've never told them about you. I noticed. Damon's gaze swept the apartment, looking for any trace of himself and finding none. Elena Martinez. You completely erased us. I had to. Why? The question came out harsher than he intended. Why did you have to disappear? Why did you have to make me believe you didn't want me? Why did you have to steal my children? I didn't steal them. Elena's voice cracked with emotion. I protected them. From what? Elena's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like she was drowning. Damon took a step closer, and she immediately backed away. Talk to me, Elena. What happened that night? Why were you in the hospital? I can't. The words were barely audible. If I tell you, you'll take them away from me. Is that what you think? That I'd take our children from their mother? Wouldn't you? Elena's green eyes blazed with desperate fear. You're Damon Blackthorne. You're rich and powerful and connected, and I'm nobody. I'm a waitress who cleans office buildings at night just to pay rent. What judge would give me custody over you? The raw terror in her voice stopped him cold. This wasn't about the past, this was about the present. About her fear that he would use his wealth and influence to take the boys away from her. I would never. Yes, you would. Elena's voice was flat with certainty. Because that's what alphas do. They take what belongs to them. And according to werewolf law, those boys belong to you, not me. She was right, and they both knew it. Werewolf law was archaic in many ways, heavily favoring the father's rights over the mother's. If Damon wanted to fight for custody, he would almost certainly win. But the broken look in Elena's eyes made his wolf whimper in distress. She was his mate, the other half of his soul, and she was afraid of him. Elena, I would never take them from you. You're their mother. They need you. Until you find a new mate, Elena said bitterly. Until you decide I'm an inconvenience. A new mate? Damon stared at her in disbelief. Elena, you are my mate. There is no one else. There could never be anyone else. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't lie to me. I know about the arrangement. What arrangement? With the Silver Moon Pack. The merger. Your sister told me. Elena stopped abruptly, her hand flying to her mouth as if she could call the words back. But it was too late. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Morgan. Damon's voice was deadly quiet. My sister told you what, exactly? Elena shook her head, backing toward the hallway. I need to check on the boys. Elena. Damon's alpha power leaked into his voice, compelling her to stop. Tell me what Morgan said. Elena's body went rigid, caught between her instinct to obey an alpha command and her desperate need to escape. She said you were already promised to someone else. That the mating ceremony was just for show, to keep me quiet until after the business merger was finalized. Damon felt like he'd been gut-punched. And you believed her? She had proof. Elena's voice broke. Photos of you with her, with the Alpha's daughter from Silvermoon. Laughing, touching, looking like. She swallowed hard. Like you were in love. Business dinners, Damon said flatly. Networking. Political necessity. Nothing more. I was 19, Damon. I was terrified of your world, terrified of what being your mate would mean, and then your own sister told me it was all a lie. That you were just using me. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Elena could have done to him. His own sister, his own blood, had destroyed his mating bond out of jealousy and spite. So you ran. I tried to run, Elena corrected. But I collapsed before I could get very far. The stress, the pregnancy hormones, the emotional trauma, my body just shut down. I spent 3 days in the hospital while they tried to figure out what was wrong with me. You were carrying triplets. I didn't know that yet. I just knew I was sick and scared and alone. Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When I finally got out, I figured you'd realized I was gone and didn't care enough to come looking. I looked, Damon said quietly. 4 months. I hired investigators, used pack resources, called in every favor I had. You'd vanished completely. I had help. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Someone who wanted me gone as much as I wanted to disappear. Morgan. Elena nodded. She said if I ever came back, if I ever tried to contact you, she'd make sure I never saw my children again. She said she had connections in family court, that she could prove I was an unfit mother. The rage that filled Damon then was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His wolf snarled and paced, demanding blood, demanding justice, demanding his sister's throat between his teeth. But underneath the rage was something else, a bone-deep sadness for all the time they'd lost, all the moments he'd missed with his children, all the years Elena had spent struggling alone because of his sister's lies. 5 years, he said. 5 years of thinking you'd abandoned me. 5 years of thinking you never wanted me at all. They stared at each other across the small living room, separated by so much more than physical distance. 5 years of hurt and misunderstanding in carefully built walls that wouldn't be easy to tear down. A sound from the hallway broke the tense silence, small feet on hardwood, whispered voices getting closer. Mama? It was a different voice this time, slightly higher pitched. Why are you crying? Elena quickly wiped her eyes, but it was too late. 2 more dark-haired boys appeared at the edge of the living room, both rubbing sleep from eyes that were unmistakably Damon's. Leo and Zane. His other sons. They were identical to Kai in every way except for subtle differences in expression. One looked more serious, the other more mischievous. All 3 of them shared the same stubborn jawline he saw in the mirror every morning. Who's the man, Mama? The serious one asked. Why does he smell like us? The mischievous one added, tilting his head in a gesture so familiar it made Damon's chest ache. Elena looked trapped, caught between her children's curiosity and her own fear. Boys, you should be sleeping. But we heard talking, Leo, or was it Zane, said. And crying. Are you okay? Kai said he might be our daddy, the other one announced. Is that true? Elena's composure cracked completely. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what to say to them. Damon knelt down so he was at eye level with his sons. 3 pairs of amber eyes stared back at him with open curiosity and hope. My name is Damon, he said carefully. And yes, I am your father. Chapter 3. The silence that followed Damon's admission stretched like a taut wire. Elena's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the small apartment as 3 4-year-old boys processed the most important revelation of their young lives. Kai stepped forward first, reaching out with one small hand to touch Damon's face. You have my nose, he said solemnly, then looked back at his brothers. He has all our noses. And our eyes, Leo added, the serious one, studying Damon with an intensity that was startling in someone so young. I told you he smelled like us, Zane announced triumphantly, bouncing on his toes with barely contained energy. Mama, why didn't you tell us our daddy was real? Elena made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Because it's complicated, sweetheart. Adults always say that when they don't want to tell the truth, Kai observed with disturbing accuracy. Damon's chest tightened with pride and pain in equal measure. These were his sons, intelligent, perceptive, brave enough to approach a stranger who claimed to be their father. Elena had raised them well, despite everything. Your mama was protecting you, Damon said carefully, not wanting to undermine Elena even though his wolf was howling with the need to claim his cubs properly. Sometimes grown-ups make difficult choices because they love their children very much. But you're here now, Leo said, and it wasn't quite a question. Yes. I'm here now. Are you going to stay? Zane asked, and the hope in his voice nearly broke Damon's heart. Before he could answer, Elena shot to her feet. Boys, it's very late. You need to go back to bed. But Mama. No arguments. Brush your teeth and get back in your pajamas. We'll talk about this in the morning. The triplets exchanged glances, that wordless communication that twins and multiples seem to share. Then Kai stepped forward and, without warning, wrapped his small arms around Damon's neck in a fierce hug. I'm glad you found us, he whispered against Damon's ear. The simple statement hit Damon like a physical blow. This child, his son, was glad he'd found them. Not afraid, not confused, just glad. Leo and Zane followed their brother's lead, both of them hugging Damon with the easy acceptance of children who hadn't yet learned to guard their hearts. Damon closed his eyes and breathed in their scent, honeysuckle and rain from their mother, but underneath it, the wild woods and moonlight that marked them as his. His cubs. His pack. When they finally let go, all three boys looked at Elena with expressions that were far too knowing for their age. We'll go to bed, Mama, Kai said. But we have questions tomorrow. Lots of questions, Leo added. All the questions, Zane finished with a grin that was pure mischief. After they disappeared down the hallway in a chorus of whispered voices and muffled giggles, Elena sank back onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. This is a disaster, she murmured. They're amazing, Damon said, still reeling from the encounter. Elena, they're incredible. You've done such a good job with them. Don't. Elena's voice was sharp. Don't try to charm me with compliments about our children. I know what you're doing. What am I doing? Building a case. Proving you'd be a good father so you can take them away from me. The accusation stung because part of it was true. Damon did want his sons, wanted them with a desperation that shocked him. But not at the expense of destroying their world. I told you, I'm not going to take them from you. Then what do you want? You, his wolf supplied immediately. Our mate. Our family. Everything that was stolen from us. But saying that would only make Elena run faster. I want to be part of their lives, Damon said instead. I want to know my sons. I want them to know they have a father who loves them. You don't even know them. Because you never gave me the chance. The words came out harsher than he intended, and Elena flinched. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, we both lost 5 years, Elena. But we don't have to lose any more. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands twisted in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I need proof. Proof of what? That they're really yours. I need a paternity test. Damon's wolf snarled at the implication, but he understood her position. She was protecting herself, building walls that would hold up in court if necessary. Fine. We can do the test tomorrow. And I need to know what you really want from us. Not pretty words about loving children you've never met, but the truth. Are you planning to sue for custody? Are you going to try to force us into your world whether we want it or not? The questions hit like silver bullets, each one designed to expose his true intentions. The problem was, Damon wasn't entirely sure what his intentions were beyond the primal need to claim his family. I don't know, he admitted. A week ago, I thought you were a woman who'd abandoned me at the altar. Now I find out I have 3 sons and their mother has been living in poverty because my sister lied to both of us. I'm not thinking clearly right now. At least that's honest. Elena. Damon moved closer, stopping when she tensed. I know you don't trust me. I know you have every reason to be afraid. But those boys in there? They deserve better than this. They deserve a father, and stability, and a life where their mother isn't working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. We get by. Getting by isn't enough. Not for my sons. Elena's eyes flashed with anger. Your sons? They've been my sons for 5 years, Damon. Mine alone. I'm the one who walked the floor with them when they had nightmares. I'm the one who held them when they were sick. I'm the one who's been here every single day of their lives. Because I didn't know they existed. And whose fault is that? The accusation hung between them like a challenge. They could keep circling like this forever, trading blame and hurt, accomplishing nothing except more pain. Damon's phone buzzed with a text, breaking the tense standoff. He glanced at it and frowned. What? Elena asked, immediately alert. Marcus says there's a car parked across the street. Someone's been watching the building for the last hour. Elena went pale. Watching for what? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Damon moved toward the window, careful to stay in the shadows as he peered through the blinds. A black sedan sat under the streetlight, too expensive for this neighborhood, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside. Elena, have you noticed anyone following you lately? Anyone asking questions about you? Maybe. There was a man at the diner last week, asking if I knew anyone named Elena Winters. I said no and he left, but... Elena wrapped her arms around herself. You don't think someone's been looking for me? Before Damon could answer, his phone rang. Marcus again. Boss, we've got a problem. The guy in the sedan just made a call, and 3 more cars are heading this way. This isn't surveillance, it's a setup. Damon's blood turned to ice. How long? 5 minutes, maybe less. Elena, we need to go. Now. Go where? This is our home. This isn't safe. Damon was already moving, checking sight lines, calculating escape routes. Pack whatever you need for you and the boys. We're leaving. I'm not going anywhere with you. Elena, there are 4 cars full of people heading this way, and I guarantee they're not here to chat. So you can either come with me willingly, or I can throw you over my shoulder and carry you out. Either way, my sons are not staying here another minute. The possessive growl in his voice must have convinced her because Elena shot to her feet. Boys, she called, heading for the hallway. Boys, wake up. We need to go. Confused voices answered from the bedroom, followed by the sound of small feet hitting the floor. Elena disappeared into their room, and Damon could hear her moving around frantically, throwing things into bags. His phone buzzed again. 2 minutes. Elena, whatever you're packing, it's enough. We need to move. The triplets emerged from their bedroom in mismatched pajamas, rubbing their eyes and looking bewildered. Elena appeared behind them with a duffel bag and their backpacks. Mama, what's happening? Kai asked. We're going on an adventure, Elena said with forced cheerfulness. Remember how we practiced the fire drill game? This is like that. Is Papa Wolf coming with us? Zane asked, and Damon's heart stopped. What did you call me? Papa Wolf, Zane repeated matter-of-factly. That's what you are, right? You smell like the woods and moonlight and running really fast. Damon stared at his son in shock. Human children weren't supposed to be able to identify werewolf scent markers, but Zane had just described his wolf's essence perfectly. How do you know about wolves? Elena asked, her voice tight with concern. We dream about them, Leo said quietly. Every night. We run through the forest with the pack, and there's this big black wolf who teaches us things. What kind of things? Damon's voice was carefully controlled, but inside his wolf was howling with recognition. These weren't just dreams, they were genetic memories, the wolf consciousness awakening in his cubs. How to be strong, Kai said. How to protect our family. How to find our way home. Elena made a choked sound. Boys, those are just dreams. Wolves aren't real like that. But Damon could see the truth in her eyes. She knew exactly what the dreams meant, and she was terrified. Mama, Zane said with 4-year-old seriousness, Papa Wolf is real. He's standing right there. The sound of car doors slamming outside cut off whatever Elena might have said in response. Move, Damon ordered, ushering them toward the back door he'd spotted during his earlier reconnaissance of the apartment. Elena, is there a back way out of this building? Fire escape outside the kitchen window. Perfect. Marcus, we're coming out the back. Standing by, boss. They made it to the kitchen just as heavy footsteps started climbing the front stairs. Elena boosted the boys through the window onto the fire escape while Damon kept watch on the hallway. Mama, I'm scared, Leo whispered. It's okay, baby. We're going to be fine. But as they climbed down the rickety fire escape into the alley behind the building, Damon caught a scent that made his wolf bare its teeth in recognition. Victor Steele. Alpha of the Crimson Moon Pack, and one of the most ruthless werewolves on the West Coast. What the hell did Victor want with Elena? They reached the alley just as Marcus pulled up in a black SUV. Damon helped Elena and the boys into the back seat, then slid in beside them just as shouts erupted from the apartment building. Drive, Damon ordered. Marcus hit the gas, and they peeled out of the alley just as several men in expensive suits came running around the building. Mama, Kai said quietly, who were those men? I don't know, sweetheart. But Elena was lying, and Damon could smell it on her. She knew exactly who Victor Steele was, and she was terrified. Elena, Damon said carefully, is there something you need to tell me? Elena clutched the boys closer, her face pale in the passing streetlights. I borrowed money, she whispered. 5 years ago, when I was trying to disappear. Someone told me about a man who helped people start over, no questions asked. Victor Steele. Elena nodded miserably. He said I could pay him back when I got on my feet. But the interest kept growing, and I could barely keep up with rent and food and... How much do you owe him? $50,000. Damon closed his eyes. Victor Steele didn't loan money out of kindness. He was a loan shark who specialized in desperate werewolves, and he always collected, one way or another. Mama, Zane said suddenly, Papa Wolf will protect us, right? Elena looked at Damon with something that might have been hope, or might have been resignation. Yes, Damon said firmly. Papa Wolf will protect you. All of you, he added silently. Whether Elena wanted his protection or not, she was going to get it. Victor Steele had just made this personal, and there was nothing more dangerous than a werewolf protecting his mate and cubs. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 4. Damon's penthouse felt like a fortress 20 floors above the Seattle streets, but even surrounded by steel and glass and his most trusted security, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being hunted. Elena sat curled in the corner of his leather couch with the triplets pressed against her sides, all 4 of them looking small and vulnerable in the vast space he called home. It had been 3 hours since they'd fled the apartment on Pine Street. 3 hours since Victor Steele had made his move, and 3 hours since Damon's world had shifted on its axis yet again. The boys had fallen asleep 20 minutes ago, exhausted by the night's events but still clinging to their mother like lifelines. Even in sleep, they sensed the danger that circled them like wolves around a campfire. They're beautiful, Damon said quietly, studying his son's peaceful faces. In sleep, they looked even more like him, the stubborn jawline, the thick dark lashes, the way Leo's hand curled into a fist just like Damon did when he was thinking. They're everything to me, Elena whispered back, her fingers stroking through Kai's hair. I know you think I was selfish, keeping them from you. But I was trying to protect them. From what? From me? Elena's green eyes met his across the dimly lit room. From your world. From pack politics and arranged matings and alphas who see children as assets instead of people. I would never. I know that now, Elena interrupted. But 5 years ago, I was 19 and terrified, and your sister was very convincing. At the mention of Morgan, Damon's wolf snarled with barely contained fury. His sister. His own blood. The woman he'd trusted above all others had destroyed his mating bond and stolen 5 years of his children's lives. I need to see her, he said, the words coming out rough with suppressed rage. Tonight. Damon, it's 4 a.m. I don't care what time it is. Morgan needs to answer for what she did. Elena shifted carefully, trying not to wake the boys. What if she runs? What if she disappears like I did? She won't run. Damon's voice was cold with certainty. Morgan thinks she's untouchable. She thinks family loyalty will protect her from the consequences of her actions. And will it? Damon looked at his mate and his sleeping cubs, and felt something hard and final settle in his chest. Not anymore. He called Marcus, who answered on the first ring despite the early hour. I need you to bring Morgan here. Now. Should I tell her why? Tell her it's a family emergency. Tell her Elena's back. There was a pause. Boss, are you sure about this? Confronting her now, with Elena and the kids here? I'm sure. And Marcus? Make sure she comes alone. 20 minutes later, the private elevator chimed softly, and Morgan Blackthorne stepped into the penthouse like she owned it. She was beautiful in the cold, sharp way of winter mornings, platinum blonde hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. She looked every inch the alpha's sister, the pack princess who'd never been denied anything in her life. Until she saw Elena on the couch. Morgan stopped so abruptly she nearly stumbled, her pale blue eyes going wide with something that looked like genuine shock. What is she doing here? Hello, Morgan, Elena said quietly, her arms tightening protectively around the sleeping children. You. Morgan's voice was barely a whisper, but it dripped with venom. You actually came back. She was driven back, Damon corrected, his voice deadly calm. By the mess you created 5 years ago. Morgan's gaze flicked to the triplets, and her face went ashen. Those aren't, they can't be. My sons, Damon finished. Your nephews. The children you helped steal from me. Damon, I can explain. Then explain. Damon moved to stand between Morgan and his family, every muscle coiled for violence. Explain why you told Elena I was arranged to mate with another alpha's daughter. Explain why you convinced my pregnant mate that I was using her. I was protecting you. Morgan's composure cracked, revealing the desperation underneath. She was nobody, Damon. A human girl with no connections, no pack, no power. She would have made you weak. She was my mate. She was a liability. Morgan's voice rose, and Kai stirred in his sleep. Elena shushed him softly, shooting Morgan a warning look that the other woman ignored. The Silvermoon pack was offering an alliance that would have doubled our territory. Victoria Silvermoon was perfect for you, strong bloodline, alpha potential, political connections. I didn't want Victoria Silvermoon. I wanted Elena. Because you were thinking with your wolf instead of your brain. Morgan snapped. You were so obsessed with this girl that you couldn't see the bigger picture. Someone had to make the hard choices. The hard choices. Damon's voice was soft and dangerous. Tell me about those hard choices, Morgan. Tell me about the documents you forged. Morgan's face went white. What documents? The marriage contract between me and Victoria Silvermoon. The one you showed Elena. The one that never existed. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus found it in your safe 3 hours ago, Damon lied smoothly, watching his sister's reaction. Along with the fake photos of me and Victoria at romantic dinners. Very convincing work, Morgan. You must have spent weeks on the forgeries. Morgan's mask slipped completely, and for a moment she looked like what she was, A scared woman who'd made a terrible mistake and spent 5 years watching it spiral out of control. I thought she'd just go away, Morgan whispered. I thought she'd leave and you'd forget about her and move on with someone suitable. But she didn't just leave, did she? Damon took a step closer to his sister, his alpha power filling the room like a physical presence. Tell me what really happened that night, Morgan. I don't. Tell me. The command cracked like a whip, and Morgan flinched. She wouldn't listen, Morgan said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I showed her the documents, told her about the arrangement, but she kept saying she didn't believe it. She said she was going to find you, make you tell her the truth yourself. Damon's blood turned to ice. So what did you do? I called Victor. Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. You called Victor? You gave me to that monster? I didn't give you to him. Morgan turned on Elena with desperate fury. I hired him to scare you. To make you understand that staying would be dangerous for everyone. By having his men kidnap me? Elena's voice was rising, and all 3 boys were starting to stir. By having them drag me out of the hotel and throw me in the back of a van? They weren't supposed to hurt you. They broke my ribs. Elena was on her feet now, carefully settling the confused children behind her before advancing on Morgan like an avenging angel. They beat me until I miscarried, or thought I had. I spent 3 days in the hospital thinking I'd lost my babies because of you. The admission hit Damon like a physical blow. Elena had been beaten. His pregnant mate had been brutalized by men his own sister had hired. That wasn't supposed to happen, Morgan said, backing away from Elena's fury. Victor said his men would just frighten you, make you understand. Understand what? That I wasn't welcome in my own mate's world? That carrying his children made me a target? Yes. Morgan's composure shattered completely. Yes, exactly that. You were human, Elena. Weak. Vulnerable. A liability that other packs would exploit. If you'd stayed, if you'd mated with Damon properly, every enemy we had would have seen you as a weakness to be targeted. So you decided to target me first. I decided to save my brother from making the biggest mistake of his life. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children had gone still, sensing the adult emotions swirling around them without understanding their meaning. When Damon finally spoke, his voice was quiet and final. You're banished. Morgan's face went white. Damon, you can't. From the pack. From the territory. From my life. Each word fell like a death sentence. You have until sunrise to gather your things and get out. If I see you in Seattle after that, I'll kill you myself. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the night you betrayed my mate and endangered my children. Damon's amber eyes were cold as winter stars. Marcus will escort you out. As if summoned by his name, Marcus appeared in the elevator, his face professionally blank but his posture suggesting he'd heard every word. Ma'am, he said to Morgan, gesturing toward the elevator. Morgan looked between Damon and Elena, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally desperate panic. Damon, please. I know I made mistakes, but I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect the pack. You destroyed my pack the night you took my mate from me, Damon said. Now you're reaping what you sowed. Morgan straightened her shoulders, and for a moment she looked like the proud alpha's daughter she'd always been. Fine. But when the other packs come for you, and they will, don't expect me to save you from your own weakness. Mama? Kai's small voice cut through the tension. Why is everyone yelling? Elena immediately knelt beside her sons, pulling them close. It's okay, sweetheart. The angry lady is leaving. Is she the one who hurt you? Zane asked, his amber eyes fixed on Morgan with disturbing intensity for a 4-year-old. What did you tell them? Morgan demanded. The truth, Elena said simply. That there are people in the world who hurt others because they're afraid. I wasn't afraid. You were terrified, Elena interrupted. Terrified that I'd make Damon happy. Terrified that he'd choose love over power. Terrified that your perfect little world would change. Morgan's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Ma'am," Marcus said again, his voice carrying a subtle threat. "It's time to go." This time, Morgan didn't argue. She walked to the elevator with her head held high, but Damon could smell the fear and desperation rolling off her in waves. Just before the doors closed, she looked back at him one last time. "This isn't over, Damon. Banishing me won't solve your problems. The other packs will see this as weakness, as proof that you put your human mate above pack loyalty. They'll come for her. They'll come for all of you." The elevator doors closed on her words, leaving a silence that felt heavy with foreboding. "Is that true?" Elena asked quietly. "Will banishing her make things worse?" Damon gathered his mate and his children close, breathing in their combined scent and letting it calm his racing heart. "I don't care. Some things are more important than pack politics." "Like what?" "Like family." Damon looked down at his sons, who were watching him with those familiar amber eyes. "Like protecting the people you love, no matter the cost." "Papa Wolf," Zane said suddenly, "are we your pack now?" The question was innocent, but it cut straight to the heart of everything. Damon knelt so he was at eye level with his cubs. "Yes," he said simply. "You're my pack. All of you. And I will protect you with my life." "Even from the scary people?" Leo asked. "Especially from the scary people." But even as he made the promise, Damon knew Morgan had been right about one thing. Banishing her would create a power vacuum, and there were plenty of ambitious alphas who would see it as an opportunity. The real fight was just beginning. Chapter 5. Elena woke to the sound of her own screaming. She bolted upright in the guest bedroom of Damon's penthouse, her heart hammering against her ribs as phantom claws raked down her spine. The dream, no, the memory, clung to her consciousness like cobwebs. Victor's men. The van. The smell of fear and silver and blood. "Mama." 3 identical voices called out in unison, and within seconds her bedroom door burst open. Kai, Leo, and Zane tumbled inside in their matching dinosaur pajamas, their amber eyes wide with concern. "We heard you crying," Kai said, climbing onto the bed without invitation. "Did you have the bad dream again?" Leo asked, always the most perceptive of the 3. "It's okay, Mama," Zane announced, settling himself against her side. "Papa Wolf says dreams can't hurt you for real." Elena's throat tightened at the easy way they'd accepted Damon into their lives, as if he'd always been there. It had been 3 days since the confrontation with Morgan, 3 days of living in Damon's penthouse like they belonged there, and her boys were already calling him Papa Wolf with the casual affection they might have shown a father who'd been present since birth. "When did Papa Wolf tell you that?" Elena asked, smoothing Kai's unruly hair. "This morning, when we had the wolf dreams," Leo said matter-of-factly. "He said it was normal for cubs to dream about running with the pack." Elena's blood turned to ice. "You told Damon about your dreams?" he asked, Zane said with a shrug. "He said he used to have them too when he was little. He said it means we're strong." Before Elena could process that revelation, her bedroom door opened again and Damon appeared carrying a tray with coffee and what looked like homemade pancakes. He was dressed casually in jeans and a black t-shirt that stretched across his chest in ways that made Elena's mouth go dry, but his amber eyes were shadowed with concern. "I heard you scream," he said simply, setting the tray on her nightstand. "Bad night?" "They're all bad nights lately," Elena admitted, then immediately regretted the honesty. She didn't want Damon thinking she was weak, couldn't handle the stress of their situation. But instead of judgment, she saw understanding in his expression. "The memories are getting stronger." It wasn't a question. Somehow, he knew exactly what was happening to her. "How did you?" "Because mine are getting stronger too." Damon sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd the boys who had arranged themselves around Elena like protective sentries. "Elena, we need to talk about what's happening to you." "Nothing's happening to me." "Mama," Kai said with 4-year-old directness, you smell different. Like scared and angry and something else. Wild, Leo added helpfully. You smell wild. Like you're fighting something inside, Zane finished, and all 3 boys nodded in agreement. Elena stared at her sons in shock. How were they picking up on things she'd spent years learning to hide? Elena. Damon's voice was gentle but insistent. How long has it been since you shifted? The question hit her like a physical blow. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm morning sunlight streaming through the windows. I don't shift. Ever? Not since. Elena glanced at the boys, not wanting to say the words in front of them. Not since the night Victor's men had beaten her so badly she'd thought she was dying. Not since she'd made the conscious choice to suppress her wolf completely to keep her children safe in the human world. 5 years, Damon said quietly, reading the truth in her eyes. Elena, you can't suppress your wolf indefinitely. Eventually, she's going to demand her freedom whether you want it or not. I'm fine. No, you're not. Damon's voice carried the authority of an alpha who'd dealt with suppression syndrome before. You're having nightmares, mood swings, physical symptoms. Your wolf is fighting to surface, and the stress is affecting the boys. Elena looked at her sons, seeing the truth she'd been trying to ignore. They were more agitated lately, more prone to emotional outbursts. Yesterday, Zane had gotten so upset about a broken toy that every piece of glass in the kitchen had started vibrating. Leo had accidentally bent a steel spoon while eating cereal. And Kai, sweet, gentle Kai, had growled at a stranger in the elevator with such menace that the man had gotten off 3 floors early. They're manifesting, she whispered. Earlier than normal because their wolf genetics are so strong, and because their mother-suppressed wolf is creating an unstable environment, Damon confirmed. Elena, this isn't sustainable. You need to shift, and you need to do it soon. I can't. The admission was barely audible. I tried, once. Right after they were born. But every time I started to change, I'd remember Victor's men, remember the silver, remember the pain. I'd panic and force the shift to stop. And now your wolf doesn't trust you to let her out safely. Elena nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She's angry with me. I can feel her pacing, wanting out, but she thinks I'll trap her again. Papa Wolf, Kai said suddenly, can you help Mama stop being scared? Before Damon could answer, Elena's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and felt her blood turn to ice. Who is it? Damon asked, immediately alert. Unknown number. But Elena knew who it was. She'd been expecting this call for 3 days. She answered on speaker, her hands shaking slightly. Hello. Elena, darling. Victor Steele's voice was smooth as silk and twice as deadly. I hear you've been reunited with your mate. How romantic. What do you want, Victor? The same thing I've always wanted. My money. With interest. I don't have $50,000. Victor's laugh was cold. Oh, but you do. Your mate is worth billions. Surely he won't mind paying off his woman's debts. Elena's spine stiffened at the possessive way he said, his woman, but it was Damon's reaction that made her heart stop. His amber eyes had gone molten gold, and she could smell the dangerous spike in his scent that meant his wolf was very, very close to the surface. How much? Damon said, his voice carefully controlled. 100,000. The debt has been accruing interest for 5 years. Fine. Transfer details? Oh, but that's not all I want. Victor's voice turned predatory. I want Elena too. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena watched in fascination and terror as Damon's human mask slipped completely, revealing the alpha predator underneath. Excuse me? Damon's words were barely recognizable as human speech. She made a bargain with me 5 years ago. Money in exchange for a future consideration. I'm calling in that consideration. I want Elena as my mate. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Victor's voice was pleasant, conversational. But think of the children, Damon. Elena's choice affects more than just herself now. Elena looked at her sons, who were watching the conversation with wide, frightened eyes. They might not understand the words, but they could smell the danger, feel the tension crackling between the adults. I never agreed to be your mate, Elena said firmly. The contract was for money, nothing else. Ah, but you didn't read the fine print, did you? The loan agreement included a clause about additional compensation should traditional repayment prove difficult. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd been desperate, terrified, barely coherent when she'd signed Victor's papers. She'd have agreed to anything to get the resources she needed to disappear. The contract isn't legally binding, Damon said. Perhaps not in human courts. But in werewolf law? A debt freely contracted is a debt that must be honored. Elena belongs to me until her obligation is fulfilled. Mama? Kai's small voice cut through the toxic atmosphere. Are you going away again? The question broke something inside Elena. The careful control she'd maintained for 5 years, the iron grip she'd kept on her wolf, the walls she'd built to protect her children, all of it crumbled in the face of her son's innocent fear. Her wolf erupted. Pain lanced through Elena's body as bones began to shift and elongate. Her hands curved into claws, her teeth sharpened to fangs, and every nerve ending felt like it was on fire. But this wasn't a clean, natural transformation. This was 5 years of suppression breaking free all at once, and her human body wasn't prepared for the violence of it. She screamed, collapsing to the floor as her spine arched impossibly. Partial shifts were dangerous, deadly, even, but she couldn't stop it, couldn't control it, couldn't. Boys, out. Damon's voice cut through her agony. Now. Elena heard her sons crying, heard them calling for her, but the sound seemed to come from very far away. Her vision blurred as her wolf fought to surface while her human side fought just as desperately to stay in control. Let me out, her wolf snarled. Let me protect our cubs. I can't, Elena gasped mentally. If I shift completely, Victor will know what I am. He'll know the boys are already manifesting, her wolf snapped. Already showing signs. Hiding gained us nothing except pain. Elena felt ribs cracking, felt her organs shifting inside her chest cavity. This was how shifters died during botched transformations, caught between human and wolf, their bodies unable to accommodate either form properly. Through the haze of agony, she felt warm hands on her face. Damon's scent surrounded her, wild woods and moonlight and something indefinably home. Elena, listen to my voice, he said urgently. You need to choose. Shift completely or force the transformation back, but you can't stay caught in between. Can't, she gasped, tasting blood. Can't choose. Then I'll choose for you. Before Elena could ask what he meant, Damon's teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the traditional mating bite that she'd run from 5 years ago. The world exploded into sensation. Every nerve in Elena's body lit up like a live wire as the mating bond snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. She felt Damon's wolf merge with hers, felt his strength and control flow into her chaotic transformation. Choose, his voice echoed in her mind through their new bond. But choose as my mate, not as a victim. Elena's wolf stopped fighting. Surrounded by her mate's presence, anchored by his strength, she finally felt safe enough to let go. The painful partial shift reversed itself smoothly, her bones settling back into human configuration, her claws retracting. When the transformation was complete, Elena lay gasping on the floor of Damon's bedroom, completely human but forever changed. The mating bond thrummed between them like a living thing, and for the first time in 5 years, her wolf was quiet. Not suppressed, calm. Elena? Damon's voice was rough with concern and something else. Guilt, maybe. How do you feel? Elena pushed herself up on shaky arms, meeting his amber eyes. The bond between them was so strong she could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, his terror that she'd been dying, his desperation to save her, his regret that he'd completed the mating without her conscious consent. Like myself, she said honestly. For the first time in 5 years, I feel like myself. I'm sorry, Damon said quietly. I know you didn't want, I know the bond was something you ran from before. But you were dying, and it was the only way to stabilize your wolf. Elena reached up and touched the fresh mating bite on her neck, feeling the way it pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. You saved my life. I took away your choice. No. Elena sat up completely, ignoring the way the room spun slightly. You gave me back my choice. My wolf, my strength, my ability to protect our children. That's all I ever wanted. Before Damon could respond, 3 small bodies launched themselves at Elena, nearly knocking her over with the force of their relief. Mama. Kai sobbed against her shoulder. We thought you were dying. We could smell the hurt, Leo added, his face buried against her neck. But you smell better now, Zane observed with 4-year-old practicality. You smell like Papa Wolf. Elena looked over her sons' heads at Damon, seeing her own amazement reflected in his expression. The boys could smell the mating bond. They knew, on some instinctive level, that their family was finally complete. Are you really our papa now? Kai asked Damon, his amber eyes bright with hope. Yes, Damon said simply. I'm really your papa now. Forever? Leo pressed. Forever. Good, Zane announced with satisfaction. Now we can protect Mama from the scary man on the phone. Elena's brief moment of peace shattered as she remembered Victor's call, his threats, the impossible choice he'd tried to force her to make. But she was no longer the terrified 19-year-old who'd fled in the night. She was a mated alpha female with cubs to protect and a mate who would burn the world down before he let anyone take his family. Victor Steele was about to learn that some debts could only be paid in blood. Chapter 6. The silence in the SUV was thick enough to cut with a silver blade. Elena sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring out at the winding mountain road that led to Damon's remote compound. Every few minutes, she touched the fresh mating bite on her neck, a gesture that seemed unconscious but made Damon's hands tighten on the steering wheel each time. In the back seat, the triplets were unusually quiet, picking up on the tension between their parents despite not understanding its source. They'd been driving for 3 hours since leaving the penthouse in the dead of night, and Elena hadn't said more than 10 words to him the entire time. Damon could feel her fury through their new bond, a simmering resentment that mixed with confusion, relief, and something that might have been gratitude if he squinted hard enough. The mating connection was still raw, still settling, and every emotion hit him like a physical sensation. Mama, Kai said quietly, are you mad at Papa Wolf? Elena's shoulders tensed. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adults always say that, Zane observed with 4-year-old wisdom. But usually it just means someone did something they shouldn't have. Through the rearview mirror, Damon caught Zane's amber eyes, so like his own, studying him with disturbing perceptiveness. Your mama's not mad, Damon said carefully. She's processing some big changes. Like when we moved apartments and Mama cried but said it was happy tears? Leo asked. Elena made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Something like that. But Damon could feel the truth through their bond. Elena wasn't crying happy tears about their mating. She was terrified, angry, and overwhelmed by the connection she'd never wanted. The compound appeared around the next bend, a sprawling lodge built from local timber and stone, nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forest. It looked like a luxury vacation home, but Damon knew Elena would sense the hidden security measures, the reinforced walls, the escape routes built into every room. Whoa, Kai breathed, pressing his face to the window. Papa Wolf, do you live in a castle? It's not a castle, Damon said, some of his tension easing at his son's awe. It's just a safe place for our pack. Our pack. Zane bounced in his seat. Are we really a pack now? We've always been a pack, Elena said softly, and Damon felt the first crack in her emotional walls. We just didn't know it yet. Marcus met them at the front door, his usual professional demeanor softened by obvious relief. Perimeter's secure, boss. Motion sensors, infrared, the works. Nobody's getting within a mile of this place without us knowing. Good. What about Victor? Still in the city as far as we can tell, but he's got people asking questions. And boss? Marcus hesitated. There's something else. Morgan's gone dark. None of our contacts have seen her since you banished her. Damon felt Elena's sharp spike of alarm through the bond. Morgan, loose and unaccounted for, was almost as dangerous as Victor himself. Keep looking, Damon ordered. I want to know where she is and what she's planning. Inside, the compound was warm and welcoming despite its defensive nature. A massive stone fireplace dominated the living room, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the surrounding forest. The triplets ran from room to room, their delighted voices echoing off the vaulted ceilings. This place is huge. Kai called out from somewhere upstairs. Papa Wolf, there's a game room. Zane shouted from another direction. And a library with real books. Leo added, his voice reverent. For the first time since the mating, Elena smiled, a real smile that made Damon's chest tight with longing. They love it, she said. It's their heritage, Damon replied. This is what I wanted to give them from the beginning. Space to run, to be themselves, to understand what they are. Elena's smile faded. What they are is children. Human children who happen to have some werewolf genetics. Elena. No. She turned to face him fully, her green eyes blazing. I know what you did was necessary. I know you saved my life. But don't think that gives you the right to decide how to raise our children. Our children, Damon repeated. You said our. Elena's hand flew to the mating bite, her face flushing as she realized what she'd revealed. Through their bond, Damon felt her emotions shift, anger giving way to confusion blending with something that felt dangerously like hope. The bond is affecting how I think, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. Making me feel things that aren't real. Everything you're feeling is real, Damon said quietly. The bond doesn't create emotions, Elena. It just amplifies what's already there. That's what I'm afraid of. Before Damon could ask what she meant, the triplets came thundering down the stairs like a pack of actual wolves. Papa Wolf. Kai launched himself at Damon's legs. Can we go outside? The forest smells like home. Like running and hunting in moonlight, Leo added, his eyes bright with excitement. Like Pack, Zane finished, and all three boys looked at Damon with identical expressions of pleading. Elena stiffened. Boys, you can't just run off into the woods. Actually, they can, Damon interrupted gently. This is Pack territory. It's protected, warded, completely safe. They need to connect with their wolf nature, Elena. They've been suppressed for too long. They're 4 years old. They're werewolf cubs who've been forced to live as humans their entire lives, Damon countered. Look at them, Elena. Really look at them. Elena glanced at her sons and went still. The boys were practically vibrating with contained energy, their nostrils flared as they scented the forest beyond the windows. Kai was unconsciously shifting his weight from foot to foot in a motion that looked remarkably like a wolf's hunting stance. Leo's eyes had gone golden at the edges, and Zane was making soft whining sounds under his breath. They need to shift, Elena whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Their first transformation is overdue, Damon confirmed. Most werewolf children shift for the first time between ages 3 and 4. The boys are almost 5, and they've never been allowed to explore that part of themselves. Because I was protecting them. Because you were afraid. Damon's voice was gentle but implacable. And now our sons are paying the price for that fear. Elena's emotions crashed through their bond, guilt, terror, love, and desperate protectiveness all tangled together. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to be a werewolf mother. I barely know how to be a werewolf. Then let me teach you. Damon knelt in front of her, careful not to crowd her. Let me teach all of you. This is what I was born for, Elena. Leading, protecting, guiding cubs through their first shifts. Elena looked up at him through her fingers. And if something goes wrong? If they can't control it? If they hurt someone? They won't. They're not alone anymore. They have their alpha, their pack, their proper place in the world. Damon's voice dropped to a whisper. They have their father. The triplets had gone completely still during this exchange, their supernatural hearing picking up every word. When Elena finally looked at them, their amber eyes were wide with hope and fear in equal measure. Mama, Kai said quietly, do you not want us to be wolves? The question broke something inside Elena. She opened her arms, and all three boys rushed into her embrace. I want you to be happy, she whispered against Kai's hair. I want you to be safe. I want you to understand that you're perfect exactly as you are, no matter what form you take. But you're scared of the wolf part, Leo observed with devastating accuracy. Yes, Elena admitted. I'm terrified of the wolf part. But maybe it's time I stop letting fear make decisions for our family. Damon felt the shift in her emotions through their bond, resignation giving way to determination, terror transforming into fierce protectiveness. This was the Elena he'd fallen in love with 5 years ago, the woman who would walk through fire for the people she loved. Okay, Elena said, her voice stronger now. Okay. But we do this together. All of us. Together, Damon agreed. Papa Wolf? Zane tugged on Damon's shirt. Does this mean we can finally be real wolves? It means you can finally be yourselves, Damon replied. All of yourselves. 2 hours later, they stood at the edge of the forest as the sun set behind the mountains. Elena had changed into clothes that could survive a transformation, and the boys were practically bouncing with excitement. Remember, Damon said, his alpha authority settling over them like a warm blanket, let your wolves guide you. Don't fight the change, don't try to control every aspect of it. Trust your instincts. What if it hurts? Kai asked. First shifts can be uncomfortable, Damon admitted. But pain means you're fighting against your nature instead of embracing it. If you relax, if you welcome your wolf, it should feel like coming home. Elena's hand found Damon's, and he felt her trembling through their bond. What about me? It's been 5 years since I last shifted properly. It's like riding a bicycle, Damon said, squeezing her fingers. Your wolf remembers. She's been waiting. Will you stay with us? In case something goes wrong? Wild horses couldn't drag me away. Elena closed her eyes and reached for the wolf she'd kept caged for so long. To her amazement, her wolf came eagerly, no longer fighting or angry but ready to run with her mate and cubs. The transformation rippled through her like silk, smooth and natural and absolutely right. When she opened her eyes as a wolf, the world was painted in shades of scent and emotion and pure instinct. Beside her, Damon's massive black wolf stood sentinel as their sons began their first shifts. Kai went first, his small body elongating into a sleek gray wolf with amber eyes. Leo followed, his transformation resulting in a darker coat with white markings on his chest. Zane's shift produced a wolf almost identical to his father, black as midnight with intelligent golden eyes. For a moment, the newly formed pack stood at the forest's edge, parents and cubs connected by bonds deeper than blood. Then Zane let out a joyful howl, and the spell was broken. They ran. Through the darkening forest, over fallen logs and moss-covered stones, following trails that existed only in scent and memory. Elena felt truly free for the first time in 5 years, her wolf singing with the joy of running with her family. The cubs were natural runners, their instincts guiding them through the forest like they'd been born to it. They played as they ran, tumbling over each other, chasing shadows, learning the language of pack behavior without conscious thought. When they finally stopped at a moonlit clearing, Elena's heart was full to bursting. Her sons were magnificent as wolves, strong, intelligent, perfectly balanced between human and animal nature. This is what they were meant to be, Damon's voice whispered through their mental bond. What we were all meant to be. I'm sorry, Elena replied, the words carrying 5 years of regret. "I'm sorry I kept this from them. From you. You were protecting them the only way you knew how." "But Elena?" Damon's mental voice was warm with love and acceptance. "They're safe now. We're all safe now." But even as the words formed between them, Elena's wolf ears caught something that made her blood run cold, the distant sound of vehicles approaching the compound. Damon heard it too. His massive head lifted, nostrils flaring as he scented the night air. "Marcus didn't call," he said grimly. "Whoever's coming, they bypassed our security." Elena herded the cubs closer as Damon's mental voice reached out to his security team. The response that came back made her wolf snarl with fury. "Boss, we've got a problem. Multiple vehicles, military-grade jamming equipment, and they're carrying silver. Victor Steele's here, and he's not alone." "Who's with him?" The pause that followed was filled with terrible certainty. "Morgan, boss. Your sister's with him. And she's got contracts, legal papers that say she has guardianship of the children." Elena's world tilted on its axis as the horrible truth crashed over her. Morgan hadn't disappeared, she'd been planning. Plotting. Making deals with the devil himself. And now she'd come to collect what she saw as the ultimate prize, Damon's sons, and the leverage they represented. The real battle was about to begin. Chapter 7. The howl that split the night air wasn't one voice, it was three, small and desperate and filled with terror. Elena's blood turned to ice as she recognized the sound of her cubs calling for help in the ancient way of their kind. She and Damon had been racing back toward the compound in human form, having shifted quickly when they heard the vehicles approaching. But they were still half a mile away when the triplets' combined howl echoed across the mountains, carrying with it a power that made Elena's wolf's soul ache with recognition. A distress call. The kind that summoned every allied wolf within hundreds of miles. "They're in the house," Damon said grimly, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds Elena couldn't yet detect. "Victor's men broke through the perimeter." "How is that possible? You said this place was secure." "It is. Which means someone gave them the security codes, the patrol routes, everything they needed to get past our defenses." Damon's voice was cold with fury. "Morgan." Elena's heart clenched as they crested the hill and saw the compound below. Vehicles surrounded the lodge, black SUVs with tinted windows and men in tactical gear moving with military precision. Floodlights had turned night into day, and Elena could see figures moving inside the house through the massive windows. Her children were in there. Her babies were trapped with Victor Steele and his pack of killers. "Elena." Damon caught her arm as she started down the slope. "We need a plan. If we just charge in. My children are in there." Elena's voice cracked with desperate fear. "I don't care about plans. And they'll die if we're reckless." Damon's alpha authority leaked into his voice, compelling her to stop and listen. "Victor wants them alive, they're his leverage over us. That gives us time to do this right." Elena wanted to scream, wanted to shift and tear through Victor's men like tissue paper. But Damon was right. They had one chance to save their sons, and they couldn't waste it on emotion. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to be an alpha female," Damon said simply. "Not a terrified mother, not a victim running from her past. I need the woman who was strong enough to disappear completely and raise 3 werewolf cubs alone in the human world." Elena felt something shift inside her, a settling, a recognition of power she'd spent 5 years denying. The mating bond thrummed between them, and she could feel Damon's absolute confidence in her abilities. "Together?" she asked. "Together." They moved down the slope like shadows, using skills Elena had forgotten she possessed. Her enhanced senses mapped the positions of Victor's men, counted heartbeats, identified weapons. There were at least 15 hostiles, all armed with silver ammunition. But they weren't the only ones coming. Elena could hear them now, the sound of wolves running through the forest, drawn by her son's desperate howl. Dozens of them, maybe more, converging on the compound from all directions. Allied packs, lone wolves, anyone who recognized the ancient call for aid and chose to answer. Damon. Elena grabbed his arm, her enhanced hearing picking up a familiar voice from inside the house. Listen. They crept closer, and Victor's voice became clear through an open window. Such beautiful children, he was saying, his tone mockingly gentle. So much like their father. It would be a shame if something happened to them. Don't touch them. Elena barely recognized her own voice, cold, deadly, carrying the authority of an alpha female protecting her young. She and Damon had reached the wraparound porch. Through the window, Elena could see into the main living room. Her heart nearly stopped. The triplets were huddled together on the couch, their small faces streaked with tears but their amber eyes blazing with defiance. Victor stood in front of them, tall and predatory, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. And beside him, Morgan, Damon breathed, his voice filled with betrayal and pain. Elena's former sister-in-law stood next to Victor like she belonged there, dressed in black tactical gear and wearing an expression Elena had never seen before, cold, calculating, utterly without remorse. Where are Mama and Papa Wolf? Kai was demanding, his small voice carrying clearly through the window. They're coming, sweetheart, Morgan said with false sweetness. And when they get here, we're all going to have a nice long talk about family loyalty. You're not our family, Leo said with 4-year-old directness. You're the mean lady who made Mama cry. Morgan's face twisted with something that might have been guilt, but Victor just laughed. Such spirit. They'll make excellent additions to my pack once their parents are dealt with. Elena's wolf snarled with rage. Through the mating bond, she felt Damon's answering fury, his desperate need to tear Victor apart with his bare hands. But before either of them could move, chaos erupted. The first wave of responding wolves hit Victor's perimeter guards. The night exploded with snarls, gunshots, and screams as werewolves poured out of the forest from every direction. Elena had never seen anything like it, dozens of wolves of every size and color, all answering her children's call for help. Now, Damon said grimly. They burst through the front door like avenging angels. Elena went left while Damon went right, moving with the deadly precision of mated alphas who'd fought together for lifetimes instead of days. Elena's first target was the guard standing closest to her children. She didn't shift, didn't need to. Her claws extended naturally as she moved, and the man went down without a sound, silver bullets scattered harmlessly across the floor. Boys, get down, she shouted. The triplets dove behind the couch just as Victor's remaining men opened fire. Silver bullets punched through walls and furniture, filling the air with deadly metal. Elena rolled behind the kitchen island, her enhanced hearing tracking the positions of the shooters. 3 men, all with automatic weapons, all between her and her children. But she wasn't alone. Damon moved like liquid death through the chaos, his massive frame absorbing silver bullets that would have killed a lesser werewolf. He caught one gunman by the throat and threw him through the plate glass window. Another tried to reload and found himself face to face with an alpha's fury. Damon's partially shifted hand closed around the man's skull, and there was a wet cracking sound. The third gunman turned his weapon on the children. Elena didn't think. She shifted mid-leap, her wolf form sailing through the air as silver bullets whistled past her ears. She hit the gunman at full force, her jaws closing around his throat before he could scream. When she looked up, Victor was holding a silver knife to Kai's throat. Impressive, Victor said conversationally. But not quite fast enough. Elena shifted back to human form, her hands raised in surrender even as her wolf raged against the helplessness. Let him go, Victor. Your fight is with me, not with innocent children. Oh, but they're not innocent, are they? Victor's smile was cold as winter. They're the products of an unsanctioned mating. Evidence of your mate's weakness, his inability to put pack politics above personal desire. They're children, Damon snarled from across the room. Elena could see blood soaking through his shirt, at least 3 silver bullets had found their mark. Their leverage. Victor pressed the knife closer to Kai's throat, and Elena's son whimpered. Here's what's going to happen. Elena will come with me willingly, and the children will be raised by their proper guardian. He nodded toward Morgan. Morgan will see that they're trained correctly, taught to serve the pack instead of weakening it. Over my dead body, Elena said flatly. That can be arranged. Victor's eyes glittered with malice. But first, your mate dies. Morgan, if you would. Elena watched in horror as Morgan stepped forward, pulling a silver-loaded pistol from her belt. She raised it toward Damon, her face a mask of cold determination. But as the weapon came level with Damon's chest, something changed in Morgan's expression. Elena saw the exact moment when reality crashed through whatever delusions had driven her to this point. I can't, Morgan whispered, the gun shaking in her hands. Damon, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Morgan, don't be weak now, Victor snapped. Kill him. No. Morgan's voice grew stronger. This has gone too far. These children, they're innocent. They don't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Then you'll pay instead. Victor moved faster than Elena had ever seen a werewolf move. The silver knife left Kai's throat and found Morgan's chest in one fluid motion, sliding between her ribs with surgical precision. Morgan gasped, her gun falling from nerveless fingers as silver poison spread through her system. She looked down at the knife protruding from her chest, then up at her brother with eyes full of regret and love. Damon, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Elena caught Morgan as she fell, cradling her former sister-in-law as silver tears traced down pale cheeks. It's okay, Elena whispered, even though nothing was okay. You came back. In the end, you came back. Protect them, Morgan gasped, her life bleeding out onto Elena's hands. Protect the children. They're the future of the pack. I will. I promise. Morgan's eyes found Damon's across the room. Forgive me? Always, Damon said, his voice rough with grief and forgiveness. You're my sister. Always. Morgan smiled, and then she was gone. Victor looked down at Morgan's body with cold indifference. How touching. But her sacrifice changes nothing. The children still belong to me. He reached for Kai again, but this time Elena was ready. The rage that filled her then was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It wasn't the desperate fury of a mother protecting her young, it was the cold, calculating wrath of an alpha female whose family had been threatened once too often. Elena's shift was instantaneous and complete, her wolf form larger and more powerful than it had ever been before. The mating bond with Damon amplified her strength, made her faster, deadlier, utterly without mercy. She hit Victor with the force of a silver bullet, her jaws closing around his throat before he could react. They went down in a tangle of claws and fangs, rolling across the blood-stained floor as Victor fought for his life. But Victor was no match for a mated alpha female protecting her cubs. Elena's jaws tightened, and she felt his windpipe collapse under the pressure. It was over in seconds. Elena shifted back to human form, kneeling beside Victor's corpse as the sounds of battle outside began to fade. The responding wolves had dealt with the remaining mercenaries, and an eerie quiet settled over the compound. Mama? Kai's small voice cut through the silence. Are you okay? Elena looked at her sons, her brave, beautiful boys who had faced down killers and come through unbroken. They were huddled together behind the couch, their amber eyes wide with shock but not fear. They trusted her. They knew their mama would always protect them. I'm okay, sweetheart, Elena said, opening her arms. We're all okay now. The triplets rushed into her embrace, and Elena held them close as Damon limped over to join their family circle. His wounds were serious but not fatal. He would heal, they would all heal. But as Elena looked down at Morgan's peaceful face, she felt the weight of choices and consequences, of family bonds that could both destroy and redeem. The war was over. But the real work, building a life together, raising their children, learning to trust and love again, was just beginning. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about the part 1 of this story. Please comment below. Part 2 of this story would be dropping in a few hours from now.